Okay, we're back on where we left it. Just gonna do a little chill study session today. Just update the stream info. A little session 30. Landmarks. Session 30. Okay, we're just gonna watch this geezer, my old mate Jim's GAMSAT, and then I'm gonna have the practice exam questions on the other page. Keep this here in case we need it. I'll Oh, I changed my monitors back. Oh, that's annoying. Um, there we go. Yeah, I've got the practice test up, and we'll just do what we've done before.
Now I just need to write these down somewhere as well, actually. Sorry. Hey, cool. All right. So, number 2. So, based on the information provided, which of the following is the most valid statement? So, figure 1 could be correct because it does not contradict table 1. Correct. Broken. That, as we said before, that means that the indole is going to build up in those cells because we can't convert it to anything else. And it can go backwards, but I still think that that's where the indole would build up. So the answer for question 1, I'm saying, is A. Now I just need to write these down somewhere as well, actually. Sorry.
Okay, let's try it. Let's try 2 before he goes through the reasoning. On the basis of the information provided, which of the following is the most valid statement? Figure 1 could be correct because it does not contradict table 1. Figure 1. Figure 1 could not be. Figure 1 could be correct because it does not contradict table 1. Correct because a single enzyme catalyzes steps 3 and 4. Correct because a single enzyme catalyzes steps 3 and 4. 3 and 4. Single enzyme. Indole glycerol phosphate. Serine. Don't think so. Incorrect because it is not sufficiently consistent with table 1. Incorrect because a single enzyme could not catalyze By the way, if you are watching or here live, I'm using the GAMSAT 2026 practice exam that you get for free when you buy a GAMSAT ticket. That's the book I'm using. I'll just show you. So it's this one. Just lost where I'm at. Okay. Question 2. On the basis of the information provided, which of the following is the most valid statement? Figure 1. Tryptophan is formed by a combination of serine, either with free indole or another product, or step 3, to be included indole closely related substance attached to the enzyme. So we're looking for some sort of contradiction, I guess. So try 3. Yeah, I'm cooked. I guess we're just gonna watch this because I'm not getting anywhere. Yeah.
Hey, cool. All right. So number 2. So based on the information provided, which of the following is the most valid statement? So figure 1 could be correct because it does not contradict table 1, correct because a single and okay. I'm going to focus on B and D here because they're talking about single enzymes and I feel like I'll be able to rule that out. So single enzymes catalyze steps 3 and 4. So I don't see a reason why it can't be one enzyme.
Is serine not an enzyme? Protein enzyme? And then indole phosphate. Yeah, I wouldn't have got that. Maybe D. Correct, because a single enzyme could not catalyze steps 3 and 4. Yeah, I don't know.
Oh wait, hang on. Catalyzes steps 3 and 4, one enzyme. I don't think, personally, I don't think it would be very likely that an enzyme would be able to do two separate reactions. So I think that steps 3 and 4 would be done by two separate enzymes because the main thing about enzymes is that they're highly, highly specific. So I would say that it can't be B. The figure can't be correct because a single enzyme catalyzes 3 and 4 because I don't think that a single enzyme would catalyze two different steps. Could be incorrect because a single enzyme could not catalyze steps 3 and 4. But I don't think it's saying that a single enzyme is catalyzing those. I don't think it's saying that, because it seems to have these distinct, like 4 distinct steps, and then it's got 4 distinct mutants. So I'm actually thinking it's saying the opposite. So I don't really like D either. So it could be correct or could be incorrect. So it's basically saying, is it basically now, because I've ruled out those other options, I think it's just saying, does this contradict the table or not? So
Yeah, I guess, yeah. So we do have to look for a contradiction. I just don't know how I'm going to find that. Um, so on the minimal unsupplemented medium,
we've found out that try 167. So from the previous question, these 3 mutants, they seem fine because it's saying that that refers to step 4. Now, if I keep looking at that table, it's saying if we give indole glycerol phosphate, I'll have to make a new, just go down here a bit. Actually, no, I don't. I'll just stay up here. So now it's saying if we give IgP, it's saying negative plus, negative plus. So I think that's fine as well, because it's saying that this one here, which we said was step 4, that makes sense, because if step 4 is broken, it doesn't matter if you give IgP, it's still not going to grow. And then I would say that that means this one here, so this is step 4. This one I think is going to be step 3, because it means if we give IgP, it doesn't matter because it can't get through. And then the other ones, I'll just rub this out so I have a little bit more room. A, whatever that is, it's got negative, plus, negative, negative. So I think that's fine as well, because it's saying that this one has step 2 broken, because it doesn't matter if you give that anthranilic acid, it can't get past, but this one can. So this one must be step 1, I think. So I think it's a bit of a weird question, but I'm going to say for 2, A as well, because I think figure 1 could be correct because it doesn't contradict the table from what I can see. It seems like the figure's saying that there's 4 distinct things which could go wrong, and so's the table. All right, 3. According to table 1.
fair enough. I just don't really get the how everything's related. So step 1, try 3.
1 and figure.
Okay, we'll just transfer. According to the table 1 and figure 1, the defect in try 3 could directly affect the defect in try 3 could directly affect only yeah, really need to learn how to take some notes, I think, because I can't keep all that those variables in my head at the same time. So there's nil t I a I G P. So indole glycerol phosphate, indole glycerol phosphate, indole tryptophan, tryptophan, oh no, whoops, anthracic acid is A, anthranilic acid, and then IgP. IgP is indole glycerol phosphate, 0. So step 1, anthracic acid, which is A, negative, negro. I don't know, I lost.
Figure 1, the defect in try 3 could do. I'm going to say for 2, A as well, because I think figure 1 could be correct because it doesn't contradict the table from what I can see. It seems like the figure's saying that there's 4 distinct things which could go wrong, and so's the table. All right. 3. According to table 1 and figure 1, the defect in try 3 could affect only. Now I just worked this out. So I'm saying step 3. And I'll just double check that. So if step 3 is broken, that would mean that it grows if you give indole or tryptophan, which is what we see, but it won't grow if you give anthranilic acid or indole glycerol phosphate, which is also what we see. So
No, that's right.
yeah, I'll say for 3, I'll say C. And now we can move on to number 4. Okay, so
No idea. Okay. Alpha amino acids join together to form polypeptides, some of which act as hormones. The orders of the amino acids in 4 nonopeptides, hormones facilitates the cleavage of the peptide bonds of the carboxyl side of the amino acids lysine and arginine if they are not immediately followed by proline, whereas chymotrypsin cleaves peptide bonds at the carboxyl side of the amino acid tyrosine, tryptophan, and phenylalanine. The, the cleavage of the four non-nonopeptides argipressin, oxytocin, octopressin, and cephalotocin is facilitated by the enzyme trypsin. D? I think it's D. Because it says immediately followed by proline.
Took us a little while with that one, but it's all right. So, big table of amino acids. Let's have a look at this. So, the cleavage of which four nonapeptides, argipressin, oxytocin, octopressin, and cephalotocin, is facilitated by, or which of the four is facilitated by the enzyme trypsin. So, you'll see that I'm always going to the question first because I want the context of what I need to understand first. So I really want to understand trypsin, and I wouldn't know that if I just read this question. So I'm basically just looking for trypsin, and I immediately see something that says trypsin facilitates.
Oh, hang on. Carboxyl side of the amino acids lysine and arginine. Whereas chymotrypsin cleaves the bonds of the carboxyl side of the amino acids tyrosine, tryptophan, and phenylalanine. Yeah, I'm still guessing D.
at the carboxyl side, not really sure what that means, of the amino acids lysine and arginine if not followed by proline. So I love focusing on these details because I just feel like that's something which completely changes how things work. That's a classic thing to look out for. And it also says, if not immediately, I can't spell, if not immediately followed by proline. It also gives me something like chymotrypsin, but I'm not too interested in that right now. So if I then go up to so I have argipressin, oxytocin, octopressin, and cephalotocin. So, another reason, so it's going to say another reason why it's good to focus there because they might give you more than 4, but there is actually only 4 here, so that's not saving us any time. So if I look in, so it's saying which ones will it cut. So argipressin, so I'm looking for a lysine. I'm just going to look for a lysine or an arginine, and if they have that, then I'll assess this rule later, but just trying to simplify it for myself at the moment. So argipressin has an arginine.
Oh, I missed a step.
Yes, and it doesn't look like it's followed by, so it does have a proline there. Okay, but it says the carboxyl side. So we've got this big string of amino acids, and then on one side it's got COOH, and on the other side it's got H2N. So I'm saying that the right-hand side is the carboxyl side. So it's saying it cuts at that side. And then if it's immediately followed by proline, which I don't think it is, because what we have in the argipressin is we have proline arginine, but it's cutting at this side. So if we're cutting at that side, I don't think it's immediately followed by proline. I think the proline would have to be following it on that side. Because if you imagine,
Vague.
the enzyme is like here, the enzyme's like a
Not
pair of
this guy. I mean
scissors.
the question.
I don't see how it would be cutting here, but somehow recognizing something over here. So I think that it would cut argipressin. If we look at oxytocin, I don't see any arginine or lysine in there. So I think that's a no for oxytocin. Octopressin, I also don't see any arginine or lysine. And then cephalotocin, I see an arginine and it's not immediately followed by proline. So I'd say argipressin and cephalotocin, which is answer B.
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty good. We'll give him that. I'm just gonna get a drink. We'll come back in a sec.
Okay. Which amino acids could be isolated when chymotrypsin facilitates the cleavage of
We'll do the question first, actually. Which amino acid could be isolated when chymotrypsin facilitates the cleavage of the nonapeptide agripressin? So which amino acid, if you isolated chymotrypsin, facilitates the cleavage of agripressin?
argipressin. So it's saying what. So if we just have argipressin and we have chymotrypsin, what would be isolated? So it says chymotrypsin, it's the carboxyl side again, but it's, so this is chymotrypsin. It's just the carboxyl side of tyrosine, tryptophan, and phenylalanine. Okay, so I'm going to get the codes for these ones. So, because this is another thing that I think is classic with ACER questions, they make them very close together in their spelling to confuse you. So we have TYR, TRP, and PHE. These are the ones for chymotrypsin. So if we look at argipressin, we have a tyrosine. What are my answer options? Okay. It says which amino acids could be isolated. Okay, so it's going to cut at the tyrosine. So we've got like a TYR. It's going to cut here. Then it's got a phenylalanine, so it's going to cut there as well. I don't see any other cuts. So all we're going to be able to isolate is phenylalanine. And the answer options
Yeah, right.
are like tyrosine, cysteine. But I don't think we're cutting at the tyrosine, but that's not going to be by itself. It's going to have that cysteine next to it as well. So the only one you're going to be able to isolate, and I'm interpreting isolate as get on its own, is the phenylalanine. So that'll be answer A for 5. 6. What are the
What are the key products when the cleavage of the known peptide cephalotocin? What are the products when the cleavage of the nonopeptide cephalotocin is facilitated? What are the products when the cleavage of the nonopeptide cephalotocin is facilitated by the enzyme trypsin? The cleavage. Okay, what are the products
the products when the cleavage of the known peptide cephalotoxin is facilitated by trypsin. So it cuts lysine and arginine. So the only one I see in there is arginine. So the answer options are saying a single, like dipeptide, tripeptide, whatever. So we're going to have on the we're going to be cutting on the right hand side of the arginine again. So we're going to have cysteine, tyrosine, phenylalanine, and arginine in one block. That's 4, and then ASN, CYS, PRO, whatever, and another one. So that's 5. So I think it would be, yeah, tetrapeptide. Yeah, actually it would be tetrapeptide and a pentapeptide. Yeah, okay. So 6 is D.
Why? I guess I just don't know what that is, so I guess I just can't answer this question, which is great.
All right, scared myself there. I'll blame the dog. Okay, so suppose that for easier analysis, argipressin is to be broken into units no longer than tripeptides. To do this, trypsin, chymotrypsin, and one other enzyme are needed.
C, glutamate? We're just gonna guess
This other
glutamate
enzyme
because
should
I
be
don't really
able
have
to
a brain power to
cleave
reason it
bonds
out.
at the carboxyl side of. Okay, so I need no longer than 3. So what was it? It was argipressin.
Could be
So
cysteine though.
currently, if I
Could be B,
cut argipressin,
but I'm just gonna guess C.
I would be cutting at the lysine, of which there is none, the arginine, of which there is one. So that would mean we get a GLY over here, and we get this big whole block with arginine there. Then we're also cutting at TYR, which means we're getting CYS at the start, TYR, that's all cut off. This GLY is cut off. And then we're cutting it, there's no tryptophan, and then there's a phenylalanine, which means we get the phenylalanine isolated as well. But it means in the middle, we have a GLN, ASN, CYS, PRO, ARG sequence. So we'd need to cut either here on the carboxyl side of ASN or on the carboxyl side of cysteine. So of those options, the only one which I think works is cysteine. Which one's glutamine? Glutamine's GLN. No, so that wouldn't work. So if we cut GLN, then we've got a 4 sequence. If we cut proline, again, we've got a 4 sequence. So yeah, the only one that works would be, of those answer options, is cysteine, but ASN would work as well. So that's answer option B. Okay. 8.
Alright, we're gonna leave that one there. Maybe I'll continue next session with that. Let's just check this out. See what this is.
just going through a lot of the things that many of my students find very difficult when they're trying to improve their Section 3 score. So if you do find these videos useful, I'd really appreciate it if you could like, comment, and subscribe. Okay, so as I mentioned in the intro, today we're going to be doing scientific notation and index laws. And I thought a really good way to demonstrate the importance of these skills is actually through a problem. And then when we get stuck, you'll see where these skills actually come into play. So this is just a question that I've generated myself that I hope is slightly in the style of the GAMSAT. And my advice generally, I won't go too much through how I approach questions in this video, but generally I suggest skipping the stem and going straight to the question. So if we went to the question, we'd see a lot of numbers, and that'd probably point us towards that we need to do some kind of calculation. And just to save a little bit of time, I've just rewritten the exact formula that we had up here, just rewritten it down here for us. And this one's quite straightforward because I want to use this question to be able to practice those skills that I think are really important. And as we start filling in these numbers, you'll very quickly, notice I've just said that pi equals 3, just to approximate. You'll very quickly start to see the problem with this. So 8 times 0.004 times 0.01. So I would challenge anyone to be able to do that accurately without scientific notation and index laws, because there's so many things that you're going to have to do. You're going to have to times 0.005 by itself 4 times. I would have no idea how to do that. And especially when you're under time pressure in the GAMSAT, it's incredibly difficult. So before we start going through those skills, I'd also like to point your attention to the answers themselves. So these are all powers of 10 away from each other. So these numbers are actually quite different. However, the problem in the GAMSAT and with a lot of problems is that if you just carry one of these decimal places one place too far or do something just a little bit incorrectly, that's how you're going to get from A to B. So although these answers are very far apart, it's actually easier than you think to make a mistake carrying a 10 or forgetting to cross out a 0 or something like that. And that's going to be the difference between getting from A to B, for example. So that's why I think scientific notation and index laws are so important, because it enables you to do these calculations without making those errors which are so costly. Okay, so hopefully I've convinced you that this is a problem and we need to have a way to solve that. So we'll park this for a little bit, go learn about scientific notation and index laws, and then we'll come back and see if that helps us do this problem. All right, so let's get started with scientific notation. So essentially what scientific notation is just a way to represent large numbers or small numbers in just a different format. So here I've written 1000 and I've broken it into if you were multiplying it by things of 10. So if you took 1 and multiplied it by 10, that equals 10. If you multiply that by 10 again, it equals 100. And if you multiply by 10 again, it equals 1000. So these two are exactly the same. I've just kind of broken that 1000 into how many tens it has. And that's exactly what we do in scientific notation. So this would just be 1 times 10 to the power of 3. And this 3 just represents how many times I've had to multiply the number in front, so this 1, by 10. And that's all we're doing. And if you've got a particularly keen eye, you might have noticed that every time I multiply by 10, so if we look at these numbers in purple here, I know they're small, but if you look at every time I multiply by 10, all I'm doing is adding a 0. And we can kind of use this to our advantage to work out what a number is in scientific notation really easily. So I'll show you that now. So let's just take something like 10,000. What I recommend you do is put a decimal point at the end of the number and then just jump this decimal point. Pretend it's just jumping those zeros until you get to the first number. So that settles in here. Just do it in blue. And then you just count the jumps. So 1, 2, 3, 4 jumps. And that gives you your number in scientific notation. And again, why that works is because every time we multiply by 10, we're just adding a 0. So if we count how many zeros there are, we're doing exactly the same thing, just slightly in reverse. Now, if you have some kind of peculiar numbers like 213,456, the process is exactly the same, but you just need to be aware of one slight difference. So we still put our decimal point down and we jump it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So we want to go to the very last number. And then the only thing so we know that because we've jumped it 5 times, we end up with 10 to the 5. But the only thing that's different this time is our number at the front is not 1 because we have this 213,000 thing. If we had 1, we would just get 100,000. So we need to represent that, and how you do that is wherever this decimal point ends up, it's just this new number. So this would be 2.13456 times 10 to the 5. And if you think about it, this works because if we times this by 10, that decimal point's just going to move back that way. So if we times it by 10 5 times, we're going to get back to our original number. This isn't particularly relevant for the GAMSAT because I really recommend that you round your numbers, but I just thought it's important to mention in case you are in that position that just do the same process every single time. And as I said, this also is used to represent really small numbers as well as really big numbers. So in this case, we now have 0.0001, and we can also represent that in scientific notation using the exact same method. So this time it's actually easier because we don't need to write the decimal point in. So we've already got one and we just go 1, 2, 3. You just need to remember to go to the right-hand side of the number. So 4. And that puts the decimal point there if you kind of imagine it moving. So that means if we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 jumps, we get 1 times 10 to the minus 4. So that's the only other difference when you're using small numbers is you get a negative exponent compared to large numbers which get a positive exponent. And by exponent, I just mean the number on top of the 10. And just to go through another example in case you had some funny number, exactly the same thing, 1, 2, 3. So we just go to the right hand side of that first number and we get 3.67 times 10 to the minus 3. The other thing you're going to need to do is go from scientific notation into regular numbers. So let's see how you do that. So essentially it's exactly the same, but just in reverse, as you might have guessed. So we would just write out the number as it is currently, so 1.0, and then we're just going to jump that decimal point however many times we have. So in this case, it's 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we just fill in the number of jumps that we did with zeros. And this works with the negative exponents as well. So you just put a 2 down, put your decimal point, and now we jump it 1, 2, 3, and then put our decimal point, and then fill in the number of jumps with zeros. Now you'll notice that I went a different direction when I had the negative exponent. And this is sometimes a little bit hard for people. They might get the exponents around the wrong way. I suggest when you're practicing, just associate the positive exponents with large numbers and the negative exponents with small numbers. And you can very easily fact check as you're kind of going through. So let's say we took this first one and we wrote down 1 and we jumped it this way. 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So you could, if you wanted to, just write down both options and just decide, okay, which one is it? Is it 10,000 or is it 0.00001? And hopefully, if you recognize that there's a positive exponent there, you'll pick this one. I also think with positive exponents, you jump it to the right. And generally, I think it's easy to associate positive and right as kind of those directional terms. So whichever way works for you, just figure out how you're going to remember this. But honestly, after you do a few examples of this, it just becomes second nature. So there'll be heaps of problems out there on the internet. Just find a couple, go through them, and you'll get the hang of this really quickly. So you'll see why that scientific notation is relevant in a second, but just pause that thought and we'll go on to index laws. So there are more index laws than this, but I think the best place to start is just with these two. And that's if you're multiplying or dividing. And for those of you who don't like algebra, I'll just kind of explain it in plain English. What this means is if you're multiplying two numbers with the same base, then you can just add their exponents together. Okay, I'll give you an example of this in a second. And if you're dividing two numbers with the same base, you can just minus their exponents. Okay, and that's the premise of these index laws. It's just adding the exponents or minusing the exponents. And why this is so relevant is, as I said, with scientific notation, we're converting numbers into the format where they have a base and an exponent. So, for example, if we have 1000, we worked out before that we put our decimal point here and we go 1, 2, 3. So this equals 1 times 10 to the power of 3. So you see how we're converting a number into something that has a base, which is this 10 here, and this exponent, which is the number above the 10. And we can use that to our advantage, because if we had something like 1000 times, let's say 10,000, we could convert both of these to scientific notation. So this would be 10 to the 3, or 1 times 10 to the 3, but anything times 1 is just itself, so we'll cancel that out, times 10 to the 4. And how I knew that is because it's just one extra zero on top of 1000. And now you can see that we've got two numbers. They have the same base, so they both have the base 10. So what we can do is just take their exponents, which are these numbers here, and just add them together. So when we multiply these two numbers, we just get 10 to the 7. And it's as easy as that. And by the same token, if we were dividing these numbers, so 10 to the 3 divided by 10 to the 4, it's exactly the same thing. But now we have 3 minus 4. So this is actually, so 3 minus 4, which equals 10 to the negative 1. Okay, now let's bring these two things together. So we've got quite a complicated looking sum here, but I'll show you how you can very quickly solve this using index laws. So I'll just kind of rush through these. If you can't quite convert these to scientific notation that fast yet, don't worry, you will get there really quickly.
Let's have a go. Got no idea, but so what do we do?
So if we do this one, this is just 10 to the 2 times 10 to the minus 3. Times 10 to the 3 divided by, I'm going to have to do the jumping for this one, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so 10 to the minus 5 by 10 to the 6. So we've got there. Now we can apply our first index law, so this one up the top here, to both the top and the bottom. So we have 10 to the 2 times 10 to the negative 3 by 10 to the 3, so that's just 10 to the 2, divided by, at the bottom, 10 to the minus 5 times 10 to the 6. So we can just add those together. So minus 5 plus 6 is positive 1. And then when we do our second index law, because we're now dividing things with the same base, that's just 2 minus 1. So that's just 10 to the 1, or 10. And this really doesn't get too much harder, even when you introduce numbers. Because I know this example in red, which I've just moved over here, was using all things with just ones. We could kind of cancel that number out the front away. But even with these, so I've just now changed the exact same numbers, but I've just put some numbers in front of it. So for example, instead of 100, I've done 200. And I'll show you that it's really not that much difficult. So we still convert them to scientific notation. So, and the only, and I just, because when we're multiplying, the order doesn't matter. We can do it the same as at the moment that we've all been waiting for, using index laws to solve a GAMSAT style question. So up here, so if you have something like this, you should just immediately be thinking how you can use index laws to solve this. So we've got 2000, which is 2 times 10 to the 3, times 3, and then times 5 by 10 to the minus 3 to the power of 4, divided by 8 by 4 by 10 to the minus 3 times 1 by 10 to the minus 2. Now there is another index law which I didn't show you, which would...
Yep, we're going to call it done. My brain's fried. I didn't really get much done today, or in this session. This morning wasn't so bad, but yeah, we're just building that foundation is what we're doing. I'll see you in the next one.